Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we have a special guest on the show, Simon Viggers, who's the Vice President of HR Communications and IT at Otsuka Pharmaceuticals, or should I say formally, he's just left. But reason this is more special is that Simon was the 5th guest to join me on the show, and now we are at close to episode 250. So it's been 3 years since we last spoke. So super excited to have Simon back on. Welcome to back to the show, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for re-inviting me. I would say it was fun to be in your show. Yeah, 3 years ago, and we just spoke about that. That's what we did in the beginning of these. So it's interesting to be back. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Just out of curiosity, what was your original thoughts when I reached out to you 3 years ago? Like, it's just random person on LinkedIn saying, Simon, would you be free to come on the show? What were your thoughts?
I was very curious because you're probably also one of the first ones doing these shows. I mean, now we have LinkedIn Live and we have other video opportunities and live opportunities. But at that point in time, there wasn't that many. So I was quite curious to understand what was that. And as I said, you probably the first one that did those kind of shows. So for me, it was interesting to understand how would that work. And it was a fun one. I've seen it a couple of times afterwards also, and it's interesting to see yourself on video. Sometimes not always that fun, but
no, it's not, is it? No one likes hearing their own voice. I probably haven't met anyone that likes watching themselves on camera or hearing themselves. So I certainly don't miss editing the podcast because I have to hear me the whole time as well. So I'm super excited I have Ivan here now. Probably Ivan, unfortunately, who does the show, for everyone listening in the background, probably hates hearing my voice just as much as me by this point as well. So, but what have you been up to? It's been 3 years, right, since we last spoken?
Yeah, and when I spoke with you last time was I was just finishing a position in Novo Nordisk, and since then I've been almost 3 years in Otsuka Pharmaceuticals, the European regional office, headquartered out of London, and have enjoyed that role a lot. And as you just said, I've just left that, and now I'm on the lookout for a new role, I would say. But Otsuka is a great company. It was 3 fantastic, very exciting years, very developing years. Also, Otsuka is a Japanese company, and I was coming out of Novo Nordisk, which is a Danish company, and I am Danish. So joining a company with a completely different culture and, of course, a completely different background has been very exciting. So I would say that's what I've been up to. A lot of challenging times in Otsuka as well, I would say. To be honest, there's been a lot of change, but also very exciting.
Mm-hmm. How was that? If you mentioned a cultural shift, what was the biggest challenge? From Danish culture to do you say Japanese?
Yeah, Japanese. Yeah. Well, I worked with Japanese companies on a culture before because that was part of my role in Novo Nordisk, but it's quite different when it is a headquartered company out of Japan. And as everybody, but those who work with Japan knows, it's a very group-oriented culture. I would say Danish culture is not group-oriented, but it's probably more individual-focused. It's also, which I liked a lot, the Japanese culture is very much focused on the long term. So it's not about the couple of years. It's a longer time focus, which is an advantage, I think. It's a lot about networking, whereas we in a Western-oriented company probably would look into, so how does the organization chart look like, and who am I going to speak to? That's not how it works in the Japanese companies.
Really?
You need to know the people you need to network with and understand. And it could be someone completely different from what you thought. It could be someone which is not in your line, but you just need to understand that. And I think everybody worked with Japanese and Asian cultures knows that it's a lot about knowing people, understanding, respecting, being close to people, taking some time. And I think that's some of the big differences. And of course, there are probably a lot of others that I hardly haven't understood yet, because it's a lot of things to understand. Japanese culture is very, very different from what we're used to in a Western-oriented company.
Interesting. So obviously you're on the front line during all of this, the crisis, the topic of the
Yeah.
episode, which everyone can see. How is that working in a pharmaceutical organization during COVID?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And of course, in a pharmaceutical company that I used to, because the part of the company I was in were 100% commercial, you could say. So, of course, very much used to going out to meet the customers, spending time with the customers, detailing the products, having, to be at conferences and speak about what we do and speak about what is coming. And of course, that's simply not possible. So in a pharmaceutical company, and I would believe that if you speak with other pharmaceutical companies, they would say the same. They have to really rethink the way the customers are met. And I'm pretty sure that the customers will not want to go back to whatever we can call the old days. I'm pretty sure that doctors, key opinion leaders and so on would like to continue in some form the more distant oriented meetings, because that's of course effective. So what was done in Otsuka was also very quickly was to develop a model where you actually can have those meetings on the distance, where you can gather people, like in meetings in a different way, where you can make sure that we actually are able to detail products and the doctors can actually contact the company without having people sitting out in a waiting room waiting for the doctor to be free to go in and detail the product. It's a completely different way of working, and I'm sure this will continue after the crisis in Otsuka, but also in other pharmaceutical companies.
What other work, obviously, in terms of preparing for, hopefully there's not many more crises that we're going through. I'm sure this won't be the last, but what are some of the things that we can do to prepare our people to be more ready when there's times of change and transformation?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm a strong believer in learning. And I think one of the things that we did extremely well, I had a very strong team at Otsuka on learning development. And I think that's one of the things that we should definitely continue and make sure that people are, prepared as much as you can. Of course, there are obviously something about organization change, how do you, resilience and all that stuff that are very connected to crisis and change, but also other things. Make sure people are, well prepared, well developed, and even if they leave, they leave, in a good shape. I would rather be, a speaker for that instead of, not developing people. So I think that's important. Another thing I think is that you don't stop if you can avoid it. I know there are different types of companies and companies are in different phases of the crisis, but if you can avoid it, don't stop those projects that means a lot to you, which are important for the future. One of the things that we also did in Otsuka was to continue developing HR Workday, an extremely important project. And everyone in the HR community and also the leadership team decided that even though we had a lot of things to do during COVID-19, of course, there's a lot of new stuff coming in, we would continue that key project because that's for the future. So continue to develop the organization for the future, because if you run into another crisis, you're at least ready and the company are in the best shape possible. So make sure that you develop the people, make sure you develop the project and the company. And I would also say, again, make sure that you don't drill down on those initiatives that support the employee engagement initiatives or other initiatives that are important for the employees. If I know it's difficult when you are in a crisis and you need to find the money, but if you start drilling that down, people will also feel the crisis, very personally, and they might say, "Oh, well, we continue to be in a crisis situation. I probably find another place to be." So that's some of the things that I would really recommend companies to not cut down. And I say, and maybe that's controversial, but I would say, now I'm sitting in an HR position, that maybe it's better to sometimes, even cut down on other places, or even say if we can't do the same for the number of people we have, maybe we have to be fewer people. It's a hard one, I know, But sometimes if you continue to drill down on all of that stuff that actually keeps people, engaged and working hard, then you will probably not have a strong company if you face another crisis. So that's some of the things that I would focus on.
You do see a lot of companies, they're the first things they cut back on, right? But actually, I think you need to double down on those actually.
Yeah, because I think it's we always have this we always say, well, people are our most important asset, don't we? But sometimes it seems like, when it comes to those things, that we forget that, and we try to find, the money everywhere, and maybe we should try to really make the strategic choices that makes us, able to, get, through another crisis, because we don't know. This is one crisis, and it's of course a very tough one, and it hits us all. But every company, and I've been through, different crises before, not at this magnitude, but of course, also in companies, we run into crises. So we have to be prepared for it, and we have to have the best possible situation whenever it happens again, I would say. And that wouldn't happen. It will not happen if you don't have, engaged people, if you don't have people that really want to walk that extra mile for the company, feel engaged, feel part of it, understand the vision, mission, and strategy of the company, and also, have some important future-oriented projects to work on.
Yeah, you mentioned when we last spoke as well about making the importance of trust during your audience, and not making sure that you don't have control for the sake of control. Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, I think it's also another typical thing you see both in crisis, but also when companies are facing challenges, is that you sort of, as a leadership team, you sort of try to manage that by taking control. And I'm not saying you should not take control. Of course you should, and you should also be confident in a leadership team. But in fact, and that's what I believe a lot in, is you should make sure also to delegate, and you should make sure to ensure that your employees are part of the decision-making process all of the time. I think that's what creates the trust. It's also okay sometimes the leader to say, I don't know in this situation. I don't have a fantastic answer, but maybe you have. And maybe if we go together and discuss, maybe we can find the right solution. And I think that's much stronger than trying to sit, in a leadership pilot room and manage everything. Often in Otsuka, for example, it was probably 8-10 people in a leadership team. Well, it's a company of 600-700 people. Why would we be the only one to have the right answer? Probably not. So make sure that you delegate, make sure that you get the opinion of the employees, make sure that you listen. It's extremely important. And make sure that you ask the right questions, and of course also invite people to ask the right questions. I think that's something which is so important. It's always important, but in times of crisis, it gets even more important.
Mm-hmm. How do we sustain there's a lot of positives that come out of this, we've seen, right? Obviously, the more flexibility, sort of empathy, leading with empathy, so many positive that comes out of it. How do we sustain that and not go back to what we were doing before? That's something which kind of is a concern for quite a few people, and I can already see certain organizations falling back into old habits, which obviously old habits die hard.
Well, it's a good one, Chris, and I think it's a difficult one. I had a conversation also with a couple of people who said, "Oh, so are we going now from 1 day working from home to 2 days?" And I think it's much more about that. And I think to sustain that, hopefully leadership teams, but also organizations would sit down and say, so what was it that really worked well during the crisis? What did we learn, and how can we continue to do that? What are the key points that we need to do? I also hear companies say now, oh, we leave it up to people to whenever they want to work from home. And maybe that's not the answer either, because maybe we need to find a way where both ends can meet, because sometimes it's an advantage to be together. It's an advantage to work together and sit in a room together. create ideas together or whatever. So maybe you would like to have that also at that part when we come back to normal at some point of time. So I think, sustaining things is always about asking yourself the question, so why was it that it felt much better, and what did we actually do? Sometimes I think, this thing about having kids running into the screen, I don't have that today, don't worry about that, my kids are too old for that. But anyway, sometimes you have kids, dogs, cat, whatever, running in front of the screen, and I'm not sure I would advocate for having your dogs and cats at the office, but maybe you should just allow people to have a little bit more of a daily life which fits in with your private life. I don't know why we always believe that when we walk into the office, we sort of take on something other clothes which are not, the clothes that we wear at home, so to speak, or the mood we are at home. Why not create something which
we literally do that, Simon. We literally put on a different pair of clothes when we go into the office.
You're right. But
formal for the office.
It doesn't have to come with all that formality as well. I think we are the same person, and we should be the same person, and that flexibility is important. And I know we in the older days we talked about balance between work and private life, and of course we need that. I mean, we can't work all the time. I'm absolutely not advocating that, but we're all different, and I think if we can acknowledge that, then we don't have to be that stiff. I mean, we have to be at work from 10 to 4. That's the fixed time hours. Why? I mean, if it fits someone better to be at a different time, as long as we can make it all work, why not? And also, this thing about when I go to work, I'm very different from where I am at home. Why not be a little bit more flexible and also show ourselves a little bit more? We all talk about this authenticity as leaders, and authenticity is about being yourself, more, and some would say more with skills. So I think it's all about that. So maybe be a little bit more yourself. I think that's important advice, and think about what really made the difference for us. I think we all know that there are a couple of things that will make our life much better in the future, because of COVID-19, which we didn't want it to have, but definitely have shown us some other ways of working.
Yeah, I think I've seen multiple approaches at this point with companies. Some are saying, I saw one recently where it was, this is a large 100,000 plus employee company, and they said 11 days. I don't know the exact reason, but 11 days in the month, you can choose how you want to do them, work or home. You could do 11 days in a row from home. You can break it up throughout the month. It's up to you how you want to do that. So giving them the flexibility to say, here's 11 days, you can do that. You can break it up and do whatever you want. But what was cool about it is it was something where they created a system where they didn't have to go through a long process to make it happen. It was like the trust was in the employees. So there was no manager chasing them down. There was no you have to get authorization here. It was, let's put trust back into employees, and trust that they're going to make the right decisions and do the right thing. And I thought that was pretty cool to be able to do it that way, as opposed to you need to get sign off from X, Y, and Z and see how it works. So we'll see how that rolls out. But I've seen other approaches where it's 2 days a week. So we kind of don't know. But one thing have gathered from all this is going to be different from a case by case basis. The problem with the 9 to 5 and the problem with the systems and processes we've had for the last God knows how long, it's been that it's designed around the Industrial Revolution and that focus. Whereas people have kids at home they want to take care of. People have parents that they're looking after. Who are elderly parents. There's a million different versions of that, and I feel like we just need to give people the flexibility. Do I think it's only at home? No, I think it's going to be a combination of both. I said to the team this week, we had a meeting on last Monday. It was our first meetings together, and it was brainstorming some upcoming projects, and we all said after the meeting, we could not have done this over Zoom. Like the energy and just the way we're kind of bouncing off each other. There was something about being in the room and brainstorming kind of ideas that I felt like, and we said from now on, we're going to have these meetings in the office, because we all agreed that, the insights and the outcomes that came from it were just, we've done a few over Zoom, and it didn't feel the same. So we're now going to do a blend of 3 days in a week in the office and 2 days from home. But again, that doesn't mean that one of my team can say, Chris, actually, I want to work from home this week. That's fine. So it's just really a blend. But obviously, it gets more complicated when you have systems, processes, tools in your organization that are designed to fit that other model, policies, right? So there's a big shift. But
I think, Chris, but I think, Chris, the thing that we have to do differently is to organize ourselves with, as I said, you mentioned before, trust in it, because the way, as you said, it was actually made very, very long time ago, the way we work today, and it's based on that. If you're not working at some specific hours, you're not working, which is old-fashioned for.
I don't stop working at 5, and I can tell you that right now.
I think your system is like your system, and it's based on trust, and it's based on, because it makes sense for you and your team to be together. Because I would believe the same. I'm in a network here in Denmark as well. I met with some HR leaders, and Denmark has been back a little bit longer time now, and one of the leaders said, well, we gave them all the flexibility, but I'm also missing now. We have those kind of meetings where we actually bounce our ideas. So I have to find a way to get people a little bit more back, which is interesting. But the full idea of that is not, I want them back because I need them to sit in front of the laptops and do or whatever, so I can monitor them. No, it's about being together and creating something. And I think people will absolutely accept that, because that's based out of fact, and
they want it too. They miss it.
Yeah, and they want it too. So I think it's more a question about how do you phrase it. But if it's about you have to be at the office from 10 to 4 at least, and then you need, of course, to have these number of hours in the office. It's old-fashioned, and time has come to kill that kind of say. If you trust people, they will work. And those who don't do it, well, we have the same mechanism that we always have. Performance management makes sure people are actually managed on their tasks and not their time, because that's what
100%. That's what I was about to say. I always say to my team, like, it doesn't matter how long you're in the office if we're not achieving our objectives or in the results we want. You could be in the office all day. I've had employees that are the first one in the office and last to leave, but they're the least productive and delivering. Whereas I have others that are here for a few hours and get the job done and deliver great results. So it doesn't really matter how long, where you are in the world, how long you're doing it. If you achieve the results, then that's what matters. Yeah,
and you can get your best ideas when you're in the shower. But it doesn't. It's not your working time. But I mean, it's old-fashioned, and if we can leave that, that would for me be the best outcome of this COVID-19, this crisis. If we can leave that away and say no. Basically, we trust people. We trust them that they would do their time. We'll give them the right time to discuss the tasks. We'll have very, not only once a year or whatever. We have very frequent meetings where we discuss where are we, and sometimes people would like to do more or different things, or maybe sometimes they're too busy, and we take that discussion in the moment when it's needed. But we don't focus on the number of hours that people are putting into in the office. We focus on the tasks that need to be done. I would really love that to see happen, because that would create much more engagement across companies in a very different way, and that would be the way to also, as you asked me before, how do we actually come out of this? How do we sustain it? I'm pretty sure this is one of the way to sustain it. Build a system that is actually based on trust.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any thoughts around how you kind of build a culture in a virtual environment? People that are being onboarded. I spoke to someone yesterday that's been onboarded and said, Chris, I've been working with the team for the last 4 months. I've never met my manager in person. And they said that one of the things that they're not say struggling with, but it's kind of strange, is that they don't get a feel for the business, right? Like, you walk the office floor, you kind of get a feel for the environment, the culture. Whereas over Zoom or Teams or whatever it may be, it's hard to kind of get a sense of what that, being part of that culture. How do you think we can sustain and build culture in a virtual environment? Have you ever any thoughts around that?
I hope people will come back physically, because I think in the end that would be the best way to do it. But I think the different ways to do that. One of the things that I learned in time in Otsuka was that, well, of course, you can have your normal business meeting, and of course, new people join that as well. But also try to have, other ways of coming together. We did actually Friday night, Friday afternoon quiz. Quiz. So we had some,
Nice.
pub quiz. In fact, yeah. Or we did other teams did, a morning coffee where they just came together, just having a chat, or just shouting out, having some questions or something. Other people did on a private basis. They actually did some kind of, use different kind of social media. So I think it's about using what we have. I mean, there are many opportunities to work together and making sure that it's not always about sitting and having, a Zoom meeting where, then you're asked, then your opinion is asked, then the next one, and then next one, but also have some kind of live exchange of those things that we normally would do in the office when we have our lunch break or when we finish Friday afternoon over a beer or a drink or whatever we do. So I think it's about making sure that you don't forget to have those kind of social things. Because if you have that, right? And when you invite the new guys into that, they will also get a little bit of feeling for that, culture. Because we can't, until they are back in the office, we can't give them that physical feeling, can we? We can try to. I mean, you probably can create some virtual rooms if you want to, but then we're out in something that I'm not that skilled on. But this other part is about simply making sure that, a work week also consists of something that is, fun, engaging, and just give you a time to be, with your team. That's an opportunity.
You're just cutting out a little bit, Simon. Your internet, by the way, it's just cutting out a little bit. You can still hear you okay, but it's coming in and out as well. I was mainly thinking, it should be fine. I was mainly thinking for the people that, given the fact this has now opened up the global talent marketplace, I think companies are thinking about things a little bit differently. There will be a large proportion, I think, in the future of organizations, employees that just don't ever work in an office, that work remote, right? So I think it's a new, obviously no one has the playbook yet because it's kind of a new, there are actually some companies that have only worked remote. So I'm definitely taking a lot of learnings from them. Some of the things you've already mentioned as well, but it's something that I've always been quite skeptical about. I'm not ashamed to say that. For example, hiring remote sales teams. I've always been like, well, I've always loved the dynamic of being in the room with my sales team, the energy, being able to interact with them, and how do I recreate that virtually? So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the coming years as well.
Yeah, and even more because in sales, I think, maybe some sales people would very seldom meet their clients face to face, maybe in the future. So it's not only the sales team that will be remote and not meeting each other. They will also, be remote from the the clients and customers. And I think that's an interesting dynamics that I don't necessarily have the answer for, but I think that's something you really have to think about, and maybe also because I'm not a sales guy, so I'm but I know sales people are quite a social guys. Of course,
I would love to be. I would hate to be at home selling just on my own.
That's what I mean. So we have to find a way to get to that, and how do we make sure that we don't just get people sitting there and do sales meeting, because that would be tough to sit in front of your screen all day. You have to combine that somehow. So I guess that's an interesting challenge, not only for pharmaceutical, but for any company that, in the future, you probably see more of these video meetings or Zoom or whatever. Yeah.
Someone on LinkedIn mentioned GitLab, and that's a fantastic example of an amazing company with no offices and completely remote. So if you want a great example, look them up. I've definitely looked into them before as well. They're a great organization. It's a good case study of how to get it right. They're a bit ahead of their time, I think. What are your hopes moving forward? Obviously, you're looking for new opportunities now. It seems like whenever I speak to you, you've either just found an opportunity or you're looking for a next opportunity. Maybe there's a coincidence there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
No, that's interesting, because I think what I've done in my career, it's been global or regional HR leadership roles. And I've been a generalist for many years. I've been working in Europe. I've been working in US. I've been working in Asia. So for me, that's probably what I'll be looking for. Some either regional or global HR leadership roles where I can sort of give back a little bit on my learnings in change, in my learnings in culture change, values, behaviors, vision. I worked a lot on that, so that's what I would be looking for, and that's those kind of conversations I have for the time being with companies. And size wise, Otsuka was, at least in Europe, small. Novo Nordisk was big.
You've done both.
Yeah, and it doesn't really, for me, it's more a question about what is it the company wants, where is it in terms of phase, and also the people around it. What I miss most about Otsuka, probably also Novo Nordisk, is the people. I had a very, very good team in Otsuka, and I love to work with them, both the leadership team and the HR team. So that I would be looking for again. Make sure that I join people that they don't have to be like-minded. Not at all. I like the debate, but that are good people. That's what I would be looking for.
Great. Well, I'm sure. What an exciting time, though, right? To be joining a business. Yeah. Obviously, the crisis is not obviously is horrible, but there's also a huge opportunity right now, and an incredible time for us to make change as well. So super excited for you and whatever happens next. If you remember, when we did our first show together 3 years ago, we did a quick fire round. And I don't normally do this on the live show, but I'm going to bring it back just for you. Okay. So you didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm just going to throw you in the deep end right now, Simon. So we're going to jump into our quick fire round, right? I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Okay, I'll try.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR executive?
Oh, that's a good question. What was the number one thing that was holding you back?
The biggest hurdle, the biggest challenge that was stopping you from stepping up to the plate?
Well, it's a very difficult question. I think for me, it's really, sometimes it could be that the biggest hurdle could be if HR is not seen as a strategic thing. If it's not something that is really looked at strategic, then I would be, hesitate.
We leave.
Yeah, I will. Sorry, time's gone.
That's fine. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Never have a plan B. Always go with plan A. You just got to go for it.
Yeah, if you have a plan B, you've already given up on plan A. So,
absolutely. I think that's what I would like to say.
Yeah, nice. What's one or some books you'd recommend to our audience and why?
Which one?
Books. If you could recommend some books or that you've read throughout
your
career.
I would recommend David Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. I mean, that's a very good book. You can always go back to that and learn from that. It's a fantastic book about the way we think, the way we act, the way we are as human beings. So that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. What about online resources? In terms of staying up to date with current events, your own personal learning, what's the go-to? Apart from the HR Leaders podcast, obviously, what's the go-to other resources that you use to stay up to date with current events? What's in the browser? Podcasts. You said you listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
I do podcasts. I like, you mentioned. I mean, I listen to different podcasts. I also had actually LinkedIn Learning. I use that.
LinkedIn Learning, okay.
Learning, yeah, and it's quite strong learning opportunities there. So I would say some of those quick learnings are always good to have yourself.
Yeah, TED Talks, LinkedIn. Those are the type of go-to. Seems to be the same for most people as well. And then lastly, what's one thing that you're most excited about today?
The thing I'm most excited about today, I'm always very excited about what's next, and I'm quite excited to see that companies are changing. Companies are starting to see the point about really, as I said before, trust. That employees are able, you can actually leave them to do a lot of stuff without having to control them. I'm so excited to see that revolution because I believe so much in that.
Yeah, we've been pushing for it for so long. It does seem crazy that it's taken a global pandemic for us to start to shift some of the mindset, right, and start doing and fast track some of this work. The future of work is now. Everyone's talking about the future of work. It's kind of happening with kind of we're living it in the here and now, and I only hope that we can sustain it, like we're talking about today, and make sure we can learn from it and make the workplace better for everyone moving forward. But look, thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate it. And
thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity.
For anyone listening, Simon's available. You can hire him now. Yeah, get him before someone else does. But yeah, enjoy your time off and in the holiday, and I'll chat to you again soon. All right, see you later.
You too. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.